That's a Fact TV.
Chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement. The fix is in. Even with the face-saving indictment last week of Hunter Biden, everyone knows the fix is in. 4.5 years. 4.5 years the Department of Justice has been investigating Mr. Biden, an investigation run by David Weiss, an investigation that limited the number of witnesses agents could interview, an investigation that prohibited agents from referring to the president as the, quote, big guy in any of the interviews they did get to do, an investigation that curtailed attempts to interview Mr. Biden by giving the transit team secret a heads up, an investigation that notified Mr. Biden's defense counsel about a pending search warrant, an investigation run by Mr. Weiss, where they told the Congress 3 different stories in 33 days. They told this committee on June 7th, David Weiss said, I have ultimate authority to determine when, where, and whether to bring charges. 23 days later, June 30th, he told this committee, actually, I can only bring charges in my U.S. Attorney's District, the District of Delaware. And then to further confuse matters, on July 10th, he told Senator Graham, I have not sought special counsel status. Rather, I've had discussions with the Department of Justice. An investigation run by Mr. Weiss that negotiated a plea deal that the federal district court declined to accept. A plea deal so ridiculous, the judge asked this question, quote, is there any precedence for agreeing not to prosecute crimes that have nothing to do with the charges being diverted? The response from the DOJ lawyer, I'm not aware of any, Your Honor. A plea deal so ridiculous that the judge also asked, have you ever seen a diversion agreement where the agreement not to prosecute was so broad that it encompasses crimes in a different case? The response from the DOJ lawyer, no, Your Honor, we haven't. An investigation run by Mr. Weiss that not only had a sweetheart deal rejected, but according to the New York Times, there was an even sweeter deal, an earlier deal, a deal in which Mr. Biden would not have to plead guilty to anything. 4.5 years and all that, and now we get a special counsel. Now we get a special counsel, and who does the Attorney General pick? David Weiss, the guy who let all that happen. He could have selected anyone. He could have picked anyone inside government, outside government. He could have picked former attorney generals, former special counsels, but he picks the one guy he knows will protect Joe Biden. He picks David Weiss. And here's what the AG said in his August 11th announcement of David Weiss as a special counsel. Quote, I am confident that Mr. Weiss will carry out his responsibility in an even-handed and urgent manner. Urgent manner, every witness we've talked to, the 2 FBI whistleblowers that came forward, Mr. Shapley, Mr. Ziegler, the 2 FBI agents on the case, Mr. Sobocinski, Ms. Hawley, they've all said this thing was anything but urgent. The FBI said they were frustrated at the pace. Ms. Hawley said she was frustrated at the pace. And of course, the IRS agents, they said the investigation was slow-walked. And even-handed, they limited the number of witnesses that could be interviewed. They tipped off the defense counsel about a subpoena. The judge says the plea deal was a joke. And all that's just half the story. There's one investigation protecting President Biden. There's another one attacking President Trump. Justice Department's got both sides of the equation covered. Look at the classified documents case. Spring and early summer of last year, the Department of Justice asked President Trump to turn over boxes of documents. He does just that. In the process, President Trump finds 38 additional documents. He tells the Department of Justice, the very next day the FBI comes to his home and he turns them over. Then the Department of Justice asked the president to put any boxes he brought from the White House to his home in a storage room and secure it by locking it. He does that as well. Everything they asked him to do, he did. And then what's the Justice Department do? August 8th, last year, they raid President Trump's home. And according to the FBI agent, Stephen D'Antuono, the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office, the search was a complete departure from standard protocol. When we interviewed Mr. D'Antuono, he said, first, the Miami field office didn't do the search. Instead, they sent folks from D.C. He said there was no U.S. attorney assigned to the case. Instead, it was run by D.C., in particular Jay Bratt, who's now on the special counsel team. He said the FBI didn't get President Trump's counsel's approval before they did the search. And then Mr. D'Antuono told us he had recommended that when the FBI got to Mr. Trump's home, President Trump's home, they contact his counsel, wait for him to get there and do the search together. Of course, the DOJ said no. And then who does the Attorney General name as special counsel in that case? Jack Smith, the guy who a few years ago was looking for ways to prosecute Americans, targeted by Lois Lerner and the IRS, looking to prosecute the very victims of the weaponized government, the weaponized IRS. Jack Smith, the guy who prosecuted Governor McDonald, only to have the Supreme Court overturn that prosecution in a unanimous decision. That's the guy that the Attorney General of the United States selects as special counsel. And you wonder why 4 out of 5 Americans believe there are now 2 standards of justice in our great country. Mr. Garland, I anticipate a number of questions on these 2 investigations. Later in the hearing, I expect from Republicans you will also get questions about the many other concerns the American people have with the department. The school board's memorandum, treating Catholics, the memo that said pro-life Catholics are extremists, the Fifth Circuit decision, great decision, on the Department of Justice and other agencies censoring American speech, and of course the FISA law that's up for reauthorization this year, and how that process has been abused and infringed on the rights, the privacy rights of the American people. Americans believe that today in our country, there is unequal application of the law. They believe that because there is. Republicans are committed to making that.
Thank you, Chairman. First and foremost, I find it to just be highly disrespectful that the Department of Energy was asked to be here. They're not here. They don't want to answer questions about their own rule, which is going to impact the bottom line and the pocketbook of every American, especially those who own gas stoves currently. And, you know, I just find that to just be ridiculous. They must be taking a cue from the president, who doesn't even want to answer questions, doesn't do press conferences, and just is nowhere to be found. I find that to just really be laughable, to be honest. Secondarily, this whole gas stoves thing makes no sense. Mr. Stein, I think you were saying in your testimony that roughly only 4% of the current product in the gas stoves market would actually even comply with the EPA's rule. So if you are a homeowner or even a renter and there are gas hookups into the kitchen, what are they supposed to do? Are they now supposed to retrofit their kitchen for an electrical outlet? Because it's not a normal outlet with electric stoves. It is a specially designed outlet for the electric stove in the kitchen. So I would ask the Department of Energy, if they were actually here, what do you expect the American people to do with respect to their kitchen? Are they going to now retrofit their kitchen to allow for an electric hookup to go in there when the house wasn't designed for that? Mr. Delasky, what's the cost on that? Is that in your research?
The department has not proposed to ban gas stoves.
The department did not propose a ban of gas stoves, but the department is actually going to regulate the fact that most gas stoves on the market would no longer be able to be sold. They won't be allowed to be sold, only 4%. Do you agree with that, Mr. Delasky?
No, I've seen this movie before. Where
No, Mr. Delasky, this is not a movie. This is reality.
The claim
because
is that
Mr. Delasky, this is reality. Because if you're going to tell, let me bring it to you this way. If you're going to tell my mom that she can't have a gas stove anymore and she can only buy an electric stove, but there's a gas hookup in the kitchen and now the kitchen has to be remodeled, and we were renters, we were not owners, which means the landlord had to go and redo that. Do you know what that's going to do to her livelihood? What happens if the landlord says, man, I got to go through these massive retrofits, I'm not paying for that? It falls on the back of the renter, which is what does happen. Does that sound like a movie to you? No, it doesn't. I'm not even asking you a question because this is ridiculous. This is not a movie. These are people's lives. And we have the Department of Energy who doesn't even have the guts, the courage to come in here and answer questions about their proposed rule. They'd rather hide in their building down the street than come in here and talk to the American people, talk to the people's representatives. I mean, we do have to fund the Department of Energy. That's coming up in a couple of months. If you can't even come in here and answer questions, why would we fund you? And that's serious. I'm not even joking around because this thing is stupid. For black and brown communities, The cost of actually having to go out and buy a new appliance or to retrofit your kitchen is far more dangerous to your bottom line and to your pocketbook. I'm being honest, far more dangerous. I noticed in the ranking member's comments, she never once mentioned what it would cost a black and brown family. She didn't talk about that. All she's talking about is the fact that the entire Green New Deal agenda may, and I stress may, cut 1/2 of a degree in the world's climate by 2050. And I stress may, because there was a representative from the Department of Energy in the Senate a few weeks ago, and he could not even answer the question that came from Senator Kennedy. He didn't know. He had no answer. He was like you, Mr. Delaski, just going back through this is not a movie or whatever the heck you're saying over there. This stuff is dumb. Listen, what we should be doing is a couple of things. Number one, making sure that there is actually cheap and readily affordable energy for our businesses and for our people, period, full stop. Two, this notion of chasing down the Green New Deal fantasy, which, by the way, half the globe is ignoring. China is not doing this. Russia is not doing this. And the Europeans are backpedaling from this quickly because even the Europeans now understand that they can't live their Green New Deal dreams on gas that they were getting from Russia. They don't get to do that anymore. So now Europe is backpedaling. We need to get serious in the United States. And if we want to have an economy where everybody's got to be able to earn money in, and we want to have an energy grid that is sustainable, what we can't do are these crazy demands from the Department of Energy and from the EPA. Last thing I'll say is this. If we follow the president's dream and the other party's dream of electrifying every car and electrifying every stove, you know what we're going to have? We're going to have an electric grid with not enough energy to turn the lights on. Those are the facts. I yield back.